Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, my friends. Today I'm going to speak about a very special event which happened almost 60 years ago. On 12 October 1960, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev made this speech. And the next day, world media spread information and showed a short video about shouting, angry, irritating Soviet leader who knocked the shoe and who said, "We will bury you." The whole world was frightened. What really did happen at that day? What did he say? Why he was irritated? Where did he take the shoe? Why did he knock the shoe? There are so much mythology, so many stereotypes, and some of them are broken already. And number one, he did not knock the shoe. Speaking on 12 October 1960. Oh yes, he knocked by his arm. He knocked his arm, he was very much irritated, he was angry, he blamed world imperialism, but he had no shoe. And number two is a clear thing that he didn't say, "We will bury you," because he said this 5 years before, attending one of the reception in the foreign embassy in Moscow, when he sipped very good wine, had wonderful meal, and he said, "We will bury you." And he meant we will bury you by goods, by food, by wine. We will overcome you economically, in economic competition, because it was the main issue, competition between Soviet world and Western world. And of course there was no connection with Caribbean crisis, because Caribbean crisis happened 2 years after, in October 1962. What was the reality? What really happened? And number one, yes, on 12 October 1960, Khrushchev gave speech. And he was very angry, and he was very irritated, and he shouted, and he waved, and he knocked his arm, blaming United Nations, blaming United States, blaming NATO for not giving independence to former colonies, to African countries, to Asian countries, because 1960 was the year of Africa. 17 African countries got independence. It was the beginning of the end of colonial system, and Soviet delegation offered the resolution, the declaration about independence. And Khrushchev felt that he protected 100 million deprived people in these former colonial countries, and he blamed Western world and imperialism in this. Number two, the next day, another day, he attended the speech of Macmillan, British Prime Minister. And when British Prime Minister started to blame Soviet Union for suppression of Hungarian revolt in 1956, Khrushchev also started to be very irritated, because in his view, Soviet army saved socialism and communism in Hungary. So he again became very angry. And the third time he was very irritated by the speech of Spanish delegation, because Spanish people represented fascist country. It was the time of Franco dictatorship, and Khrushchev started to shout something against fascist Franco and fascist dictatorship, that it will come to the end sooner or later. Number four thing, yes, he really protested. He never knew how to behave diplomatically. He did not follow any protocol. He never had experience in this. So this is why he tried to protest, either knocking his feet or knocking his arms. Did he have a shoe? He used to have a shoe which laid on a table in front of him. Did he use it or not? Where did it take it from? There are very, very different versions. At least there are two versions how shoe did appear there. Number one is that he had a new shoe for his speech in United Nations, and the shoe was too tight. This is why, sitting on his place, he just took the shoe off and placed on the table beside him. The second version is different, that the shoe was too big, and this is why, walking to his seat in the United Nations, he lost it. And it was brought to him by the cleaning lady, and so he decided not to wear it, put it on the table. And it is another story, did he use it or not, because when he was irritated by the speech of Macmillan or by a Spanish Franco delegation, he started first of all to knock his feet, and then he decided that it is not enough. Then he started to knock by his arm, and all Soviet delegation followed him. And then he knocked by his arm so strongly that he broke his watches. And he became too angry, saying that because of them I broke my watches. And there was a shoe beside. And he picked it up and knocked a couple of times. So, what do we know today exactly? We know that the shoe used to be in United Nations. The shoe was on the table beside hands of Nikita Khrushchev. And we also know that Khrushchev, protesting and being angry, did it by different ways, and probably a couple of times he knocked the shoe. And that's it. And probably we will never know the whole truth up to the end. What was the meaning of this speech? The meaning was, of course, terrible, because it was one of the highlights of the Cold War. It was a threat to many countries. People started to be afraid of the new big war. And it is very sad. It was so improper. It was contradictory to another side of the Khrushchev policy, because Khrushchev tried to sit between two chairs. From one side, he tried to be a strong communist leader to protect deprived people all over the world. From another side, he wanted cooperation with Western countries. He did not want to have war. He came through the Second World War. His son was killed in the Second World War. He started to conduct peaceful coexistence with Western countries. He was the first Soviet leader who visited UK with state visit in 1956, who visited USA with state visit in 1959. And then this policy of peaceful coexistence was continued by detente, when in 1975 American and Soviet astronauts met each other in space and changed their ships. And then Mikhail Gorbachev arrived, and he started to manage absolutely another policy. He stopped hostility. He started to develop partnership and friendship, and the Cold War was finished. And now we live in another world. And I think we should use our shoes properly. Nobody has to knock the shoe. Nobody has to shout. Nobody has to spread threat. We have to live peacefully. We have to develop partnership, international traveling and tourism. Thank you very much.